Welcome to Spoil Me Nisi. It's me, Nisi, here, and I hope that you're all doing very well. So today I want to talk about the 5th episode of the Starz series, BMF. This episode got crazy, so let's talk about it. Just a little disclaimer before we get started. If you haven't already had the chance to see today's episode, just to let you know, this video is going to have a ton of spoilers, hence my name. So with that being said, let's get into it. So slowly but surely, this show BMF is becoming one of my favorite series on TV right now, and I do have a few that I'm watching. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think the real plus side to the series is that it's based on a true story, or I guess according to the episodes, the message at the beginning of the episodes, it's loosely based off of the truth and real occurrences. So I guess that means that while Starz and everyone involved and 50 Cent and everything, while they were making like the episode and making the show, I guess they Hollywoodified, I know that's not a word, but it's a word in this video. They Hollywoodified the events taking place, in the show. So I guess possibly some of the events really happened, maybe some didn't, or maybe some didn't happen exactly how they're happening in the show. Who knows? And to be honest, who really cares? It makes for good entertainment, right? So yeah, it's one of my favorites as of right now. Very good show. This episode did get kind of crazy because if you've watched episode 1 through 4, I think that one common opinion that every fan of the show, everyone that watching the show has, is that Lamar and Kato gotta go. They both suck. Okay, they're both terrible. But one thing that I said in like my previous video about this show is that it does kind of seem as though Lamar is outthinking them. And in this episode, it seems like Terry and Meech aren't as young-minded. They aren't as naive. They aren't as, I don't want to say ignorant because there's nothing ignorant about these men. But they aren't as, I don't know what the word is, I'm looking for it. But they aren't as slow to understand how things work as I at least thought they were, considering how Lamar was outsmarting them in the first 4 episodes of the show. It seems as though Meech and Terry, they are dangerous dudes. They're actually very dangerous dudes. Smart guys, and they outsmarted Lamar in a way that he wasn't even ready for. So originally, when Meech came up with the idea to kidnap Monique's daughter, naturally that's like, yikes. If it was Lamar that kidnapped somebody's kid, I would know for a fact that kid was in serious danger. And he would probably do something very sinister to that child because Lamar is a complete monster. But to be 100% honest, when Meech took that little girl, I wasn't scared that she was in any kind of danger. And here's why. So since this show, I didn't really know much about, Big Meech or BMF or any of that stuff. As I said in the last episode, I knew nothing about them. All I knew about them was the Rick Ross song. That's it. So since the show, and I'm enjoying the show, I've been doing some research into who Big Meech is, who Terry is, or Southwest T is. And from what I found about these people, at least from what I found online, it doesn't seem like murder and kidnapping and all that stuff is like their crimes of choice. It was more so just like drug selling, like stuff that had to do with like money crimes and things like that. And like drug crimes, but nothing that would mean that they're like a threat to like kids or something like that. So because of what I know about like about the real life people that the show is based off of my research, and then what we've seen of them in the previous 4 episodes, I knew that little girl wasn't in danger. He was really just doing that to get under Lamar's skin. In return, that ended up hurting Monique, her mom, but in the end, that's her fault. Honestly, she had these 2 guys around her kids. It seems like Monique has everybody around that little girl. That little girl is exposed to way too much. Yeah, that whole situation with Meech kidnapping little girl, I knew he wouldn't hurt her. I knew he wouldn't. But I was very impressed on how Meech and Terry pretty much outsmarted Lamar and his team. That scene when they show Terry getting out of his car, going into some like car place. And then they show Lamar's guys getting out of a car, like as if they were going to go do something to him. When the other car pulled up and I saw someone get out with guns, I don't know why, but I thought that had something to do with Lamar's people getting ready to hurt Terry again. I really did. But when it turned out to be like Terry and Saki and like some other guys from their team pretty much kidnapping Slick, I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. That was like a scene that made me like get up out my chair, like, wow. Like I really did not expect that at all. That was a pretty good scene. Now the scene where they had, where B. Mickey and Terry had Slick tied up, I really did expect B. Mickey to kill Slick, because B. Mickey is a hothead, he's trigger happy, and he's not very smart. Now in the streets, is he smart? I guess he's like a muscle, he's there to handle specific situations. But he seems like it seems like B. Mickey's character is not necessarily part of the brains of any operation. B. Mickey is trigger happy. He's definitely turning into like a shooter, or like not to compare the show to like Power, since Power is fictional, but I personally feel like I can see B. Mickey's character turning into like a Tommy type, because Tommy, even though Tommy was kind of the brains in some situations, he was the muscle, he was a shooter. That's what I feel like B. Mickey is turning into in the show. So I'm really surprised that Slick walked, or I guess you can say limped, out of that situation, because B. Mickey's nuts. I was surprised to see Terry beat Slick up so bad. And like, yeah, he said some stuff about his eye, and I'm sure at this point that was a very, very sour button to push for Terry. But at this point, we hadn't seen Terry do anything violent at all in the show. So I was really surprised to see that take place in this episode. Now, I was a little bit taken back by what Meech said to Slick about the little girl. How when he was like, oh, if you don't tell me where the stash is, like telling him that he was going to kill the little girl. But I thought that was like brilliant on Meech's part, because I'm pretty sure that Meech knew the whole time that little girl was going to be okay. He was not going to hurt that kid. He pretty much just needed to use her to get into Slick's head, and it worked. And Slick told him where the stash was, where to get it, in the whole 9 yards. Now that makes me wonder, what does that mean for Lamar? Slick is pretty close to Lamar, but then again, Lamar is like inhumane. He's not like a regular person. He seems like he's off. So does that mean that like Lamar is gonna hurt Slick, or that Slick is gonna like quit everything? Who knows? All I know is that in the coming attractions for the next episode, I don't see Slick. So yeah, I'm wondering where that happened, and I can't wait to find out what ends up happening with Slick's story, because in the end, even though I don't like Lamar, I actually like Slick. I kind of wish that Slick wasn't in Lamar's crew, but that he was more so in the crew with Meech and Terry, because I don't know, he's more of a likable character than Lamar. So God willing, I guess we'll see what's going to happen with that. So the next thing that I noticed in the show is the situation with Pat and that detective. I thought it was interesting to see where Meech and Pat's relationship has gone, and naturally, because of what happened last episode with Pat going all psycho killer crazy, literally, it's crazy how like when the show first started, Pat was like a father to Meech, and then now in this episode, they're enemies. They're enemies because of Pat's greed, and his selfishness. And the fact that, he's using drugs himself. I mean, it seems like that made Meech lose some respect for him. But now they're enemies. And the funny thing about all that is that, Pat ended up going to the detective, trying to get some kind of relationship starting with them. And he really seemed really confident about it, like as if there could be some relationship that he and the detective have against Meech. And I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't work out in Pat's favor, because in the previews of this episode, it did kind of seem like the detective was going to work with him, but he didn't. So it's like, the detective, of course, no one likes a dirty cop. So I don't like that about the detective. However, I did like the fact that the detective seems to be trying to distance himself, because if it wasn't for that witness skipping town, who knows what Meech did or said to him to make him do that. But if it wasn't for that detective would be in a lot of trouble. So it actually makes sense that he's distancing himself from Meech. Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen with that, because if Pat has power and he's against Meech, then I don't know. I want to see, what ends up happening with that. I mean, Meech and his brother, they were out doing their thing well after. So we all know that, of course, Pat doesn't do anything to them. But I wonder what ends up happening to Pat. So, yeah, that's that. So the next thing I want to touch on is the situation with Meech and Terry's parents. Out of everything that happened this episode, the little girl getting kidnapped, Lamar strangling his friend, I think Tin, the guy that works with him, from just everything that happened in this episode. I think the most gut-wrenching part of this episode was when Lucille walked in on Terry and Meech having that conversation. Like, in that conversation, they're talking about everything. They have drugs on their bed. They're talking about people getting shot and how even though they didn't pull the trigger, they might as well have been part of it. They're talking about who pulled the trigger. I mean, that was a very juicy and hot conversation that Lucille walked in on. And there's no doubting it now, that, she already knew that Meech was a part of that life, but now she knows for a fact that Terry is a part of that life too. And I don't know why, but like that scene hit different. It hit hard out of everything that happened. You would think that Meech saying that he was going to kill a little girl, you would think that would hit hard. You would think that him kidnapping her would hit hard. But none of that did actually. It was actually that scene. I want to know what ends up happening with that, Now, I can't help but compare what happens to the show on, I guess, the little bit that I do know about the whole story of these people. And one thing that I can honestly say about Lucille is about Meech and Terry's mom. I like that she never left either of her sons. She always had both of their backs. And she loves them. From what I read online, she's still active with her son Meech, trying to get him out of jail, which is a good thing. And so even though she found this out, I guess from knowledge that we already have about the main characters, we know that Lucille is not going to turn her back on her sons. I just wonder what the dynamic is going to be now between Terry and Lucille. Like Demetrius, he doesn't live with his parents. He was kicked out of the house. He's doing his own thing. But now, is the mom going to kick Terry out? Now that she knows that Terry keeps drugs in her house, now that she knows all of that, is she going to love her sons at a distance? I just wonder what that means. Now, the coming attractions for episode 6 do look kind of crazy. And one thing that it looks as though Tin has a gun up to Lamar's head. So that scene is crazy. But one thing that I'm noticing about the writers of BMF is they make the previews look one way, and then when you watch the show, it's completely different. So I don't know. It kind of sounds like Lamar is going to get got in the next episode. And if that were the case, I kind of hope it doesn't, because with all the stuff that Lamar has done so far in this show, I would kind of rather him just go back to the mental institution, because he obviously needs some help. And so even though like he's like really, really bad, I really hope that that doesn't happen, and I hope that he goes to get some help, honestly. But yeah, this episode was crazy. I can't wait for episode 6 to come out. What I personally think is going to happen, I think that we're going to slowly start to see how Meech and his brother ended up going their separate ways. Because from what I read online about these two, I think Meech ends up on the East Coast, and then Terry, who later ends up being called Southwest T, ends up staying in the West Coast. So I think we're slowly seeing how that's going to happen, because when Terry broke the news to Meech that their new connect does not want to work with Meech because he's flashy, which he is very flashy. When he revealed that to him, it seemed like Terry, Meech kind of, that kind of hit him a little bit hard, you know, and naturally it should, because Meech should have certainly not been put on the back burner. So I'm kind of starting to see a little bit how the show is going to start branching off into Meech and Terry doing their own thing. You can just kind of see it, because Meech likes to run his operation one way, Terry likes to run his the other way, but I could see how even though they're going to do their own thing, they're still going to be connected. So I cannot wait to see episode 6 and how all of this goes over time. So yeah, this episode was great. If you haven't already seen it, make sure you do. Hope I didn't spoil it too much for you. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you like this video, comment on this video, and make sure you hit the notification button and subscribe to this channel. So until next time, you guys, I hope that you all do well, and God bless you all in Jesus' name. Peace.